Day and welcome. I am Lesroy Williams. Today we will be highlighting some more work of the diasporic community. Of course, you know there are Kititians and Divisions who are living abroad, but yet their heart, their soul, their mind, their desire is really about their homeland and how they can help their homeland in its development. We are talking here national development. We are here to highlight, to present another son of the soil who lives in the diaspora. You will hear more about his work in this program. His name is Mr. Constantine Greenaway. Mr. Greenaway, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Thank you for having me.
Right. Now we are going to engage in a discussion about the importance, of course, of those Kititians and Divisions who live in the diaspora, but who are contributing to their homeland. But before we even go to the diaspora, because you never always lived in diaspora, you know that word, of course, diaspora, we hear it very often, and especially in relation to we heard about the community of Israel, and that they went into exile into Babylonia because the temple was destroyed in Jerusalem. They had lost the temple. It was the place that they worshipped. There was only one temple. And so therefore, they felt isolated. They felt rejected. They felt that their world had crumbled. And they were exiled in Babylonia. So you hear about the Jews in Babylon. But yet, they longed to return to Jerusalem.
That's right.
And that song, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and we wept when we remembered Zion. And they also sang, how can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land?
Right.
Now you live in the diaspora, and tell me something about your background here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Well, I was born in Buckley's Estate. I grew up in Buckley's Estate. It was, let me say this, and I always tell people this, we were very poor, but we didn't know it because life was really wonderful. You had friends and family all around you. You can go to any neighbor's yard and, hang out there. And if your mom didn't have anything to cook, you made sure you visited the neighbor when they were just about to serve food, because they were going to, they were going to give you a plate, right? So, we had fun growing up, playing all kind of games, day and night. So it was a wonderful place to grow up. I've always said, quite frankly, I'd never give up one day in St. Kitts for anything in Canada, because the joy and happiness that you felt here, so at ease, so safe. You really don't feel that. Well, I haven't felt that abroad, So, and I left here when I was 13. I went to St. Johnson. Well, of course, my first school was Baby D up in the village, Then I went to St. Johnson Village School. Then I spent about a year at the senior school before leaving for Canada. So all the Buckley's area, Trafalgar, Limekeel Bay, Eloise, that was my stomping ground when I was growing up here in St. Kitts.
Right. So you basically left for Canada more or less at the beginning of your secondary school.
That's correct, yes.
So you would have had your secondary schooling in Canada.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Now, where in Canada are you settled?
We left here in '68, went directly to Montreal. And my family, the base parents, have always lived in Montreal. I have always lived in Montreal. I've traveled around for work, but Montreal is, in fact, my base and the base of most of my family.
Okay, I take it that you speak French. Do they speak French in Montreal?
Yes. It's very much bilingual.
Bilingual.
Montreal itself is very much a bilingual city. Quebec overall is a majority French,
Yes.
but the city of Montreal is very much bilingual. So
Okay.
we functioned very well in there. And of course, I made sure my children went to French school and they both speak both languages.
They're bilingual.
They're both bilingual. I fumble around with French, so
Okay.
I get along.
You get around.
I get yeah. I manage to get along, so I'm fine.
Now, how were your teenage years growing up in Montreal?
Oh, it was quite different. I mean, fun also, but very different. Things are more dispersed. Here you can walk across the alley and you find a friend there. Sometimes your friend is miles away. One of the problems we have in Canada is that we tend to associate, frankly, more at work, work and school, than we do in our neighborhoods.
Yes.
Because you come home from work, you come home from school, you go inside the house, and that's basically it. That's basically where you stay for the rest of the afternoon, evening, until next morning when you go out to work or school. So very few, it's a very strange environment sometimes, where you're making your friends at school, you're making your friends at work, and very few friends actually in your neighborhood. I mean, personally, I've been living in a condo for about 8 years, and I really can't tell you who the next person is beside me in that condo, because when I come home, you're in your little cave until you leave the next morning. So it's a very different environment to grow up in Canada as opposed to
Okay, so you went to high school
Yes.
in Montreal, and then after high school you would have had your tertiary education.
Yes.
Now, could you tell us a little bit in terms of your educational journey? That
Sure.
was from high school up to tertiary education, and what you would have done
Yes.
after you would have graduated from university.
Well, in Canada, normally you go to high school. Well, I say correct because Ontario has a different system. You go to high school until you're 16, normally, and then you go to college for 2 years, and then you go on to university. So in high school, it's sort of a general education. Then you might want to specialize when you're going to college, which I did. I specialized in biology, and then went on to university, where I specialized. I did a degree in physiology at McGill University, Montreal. My intention, of course, was to go on to medicine, but I got sidetracked there, unfortunately. So I left university for a while after my first degree. I did some work, and I went back and studied in computer science. Then I spent the next 15 years working in computer science for most of the top companies in Canada.
Okay.
Working as a consultant mainly in programming. So that's basically my background in education.
Okay. Now, why did you actually leave St. Kitts? Why did you leave? There's always a reason why people leave and people come. We can call them push factors or pull factors. Why did you go to Canada?
Well, I guess in terms of what you're saying, there are really some push factors and pull factors, because you have family over there. I think my grandfather's aunt got over there, and she sent for him. Then he sent for my grandmother and her children, except my mother, of course, at that time. Then my grandmother sent for, my mother and the rest of her children. I think there were 7 of us traveling at the time. So this woman with this whole bunch of children going to Canada. And so it is because really they weren't growing up. Again, we were on Buckler's estate. My mother worked as a domestic. My grandmother worked in the fields, throwing cane and weeding and so on. And quite frankly, back then there weren't too many opportunities. At least back then I didn't see those opportunities, and I suppose my parents did not either. So the option was to really move to Canada, really to provide better opportunities for your children, better education, better employment opportunities, better development opportunities. Very much different from today.
Yes.
Where you can find just about everything happening here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
There has been, a lot of development.
Oh, absolutely.
Since you would have left.
Oh, yes. I came back first in '84, and back then I was even surprised to see how much had changed.
Yes.
And of course it has not stopped.
So how long have you been living in Canada? Don't try I'm trying to figure out age or anything.
I've been there for, well, approaching 51 years. You know, we left in 68, so a bit over 50 years now.
So it's really over half of a century.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
So you've seen quite a bit.
Yes, I mean, my life has been there. You know, my kids were born there, married there, and so on. So my life
Right.
has been in Canada, Montreal, Canada.
If I had to ask you, what do you miss most about St. Kitts? What would you say?
Well, again, I miss the camaraderie, the friendship I used to have back then. You know, the way we grew up. You know, with, like I said, you know, you could walk into your neighbor's yard and, you know, you just sit around and talk at nights with your friends and so on. You don't see that anymore down here. You know, everybody's locked in. You know, becoming very much like us up there. You know, you come home and you're inside watching TV or playing Nintendo. You know, you're not out playing hoop and peewit and all those stuff that we used to play as children. So, I mean, as I suppose it's one of the factors of, well, modernizing, I guess. You know, and perhaps to our detriment, perhaps to our detriment, because we don't socialize. At least I don't see it when I come down. We don't socialize the way we used to. You know, yesterday I'm walking up 2 days ago I'm walking up on 4th Street, and a couple of students walking by, and a couple of them said, "Good afternoon," and it was surprising, you know, because several had passed by and just, you know, on their cell phones and so on, as if like, you know, no one else existed. You know, and I remember growing up down here, every time you pass anyone on the street, an adult especially, you have to say good morning, you have to say good afternoon, and
Right.
you know, with respect.
People are more turning into themselves. And,
Precisely.
And, you know, of course, you say sometimes technology is responsible for that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people onto their social media. You can live in the same house,
Mm-hmm.
and yet people are communicating via WhatsApp.
Oh yes.
And via Messenger.
Oh yes.
And so on, and they're telling you happy birthday.
Right. And you're in the next
via
room.
WhatsApp, and you're in the next room.
Next room.
You know, so
yeah. We don't talk to each other anymore. We
right,
don't
we're losing that face-to-face
right, precisely.
Interaction.
Mm-hmm. That is
and
true.
so on. We speak about, you know, with technology, information communication technologies,
Mm-hmm.
we now have a global village,
Yes.
and that everything seems to be so close.
Yes. But
Yet here you are saying still, things seem so far apart.
in many ways, because I think perhaps as we get closer globally, you know, locally and socially, we're drifting apart. We're not having those social connections that we used to. We don't communicate with each other
Right.
like we used to.
And part of my experience, for example, in those larger countries, you seem to sometimes, or you can feel lonely and lost, because everybody is about their own business.
That is
Nobody stops to say hi. Everybody is just going, and it's
Yeah.
such a fast pace and so on.
true. Yes, yes.
While, you know, the island life is a bit more laid back,
That
a
is
bit
true.
more relaxed,
Yes, yes,
not
yes.
as hectic,
Not a second.
and so on. But at the very same time, we are coming of age. You know, we are kind of getting a bit faster. The technology is now, you know, has improved.
Yes, indeed.
And all of that and so on. And with it, of course, come its positives. But then you
Negatives
feel that
as well.
something is lost as
Yes,
well.
of course. Yes, yes, yes.
Right.
Perhaps it's a natural state of things. I don't know, but I think we should sort of look at what's happening abroad, because truly we always a few steps behind. You know, we should always look at what's happening abroad and the negative effects of technology, and try, if we can, to sort of prevent, you know, intervene before we get to that point. You know, what I mean, of
Yes.
losing ourselves,
Yes.
as we
Yes.
see others have. You know,
Right.
So, but you know, we just stumble along and we want to be like them, and you know, and
Now, talking about
make the same mistakes.
talking about losing yourself, and we are speaking in the context of you living in the diaspora. And of course, you know, we have our own culture here.
of course,
Canada has its culture. And to a certain extent, there has to be some assimilation that would take place.
yes, indeed.
Because you've lived there for over 50 years,
Right,
which
right.
is a half of a century.
Mhm.
But do you lose that part of yourself that is Kittitian or Nivishan?
Well, yes, I at one point I did, and for me, I think I found myself again when I actually found the St. Kitts and Nevis Cultural Association in Montreal, because, as I said, I went there when I was 13. So you do have to adapt.
Yes.
You know, you have to try and speak properly, so to speak.
Yes.
Otherwise, the kids will laugh at you. They don't understand you. So you really have to adapt to, in many ways, right? And at one point, I found myself like, you know, I would hear my people say, "Oh, soca and reggae and so on, like they all sound the same and so on." And at one point, I was getting that same feeling, you know, this music, and I'm losing the sense of the culture down here. And it's funny, in about 1990, well, before that, I would see my grandmother and my mother and going off to these meetings on Sundays, and there was a time, they call me Time, well, people only call
Yes.
me
Time?
Tyne.
Time, okay.
Yeah, Constantine.
Oh, the Time,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they say, come to the meeting, and I would say, no, that's for old people, right? And then finally, in 1990, I joined the St. Kitts and Nevis Cultural Association in Montreal, and it was like a revelation. You know, I was again among my people, you know, and everything sort of came back and was so fresh and I felt fulfilled.
Right.
I felt fulfilled being among my own people, you know.
So there was that, what you're saying is that there was that connection.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
But when you had gone there at the age of 13, you were not able to find that connection.
No, you were among essentially Canadians, I mean, blacks and whites and so on, but all of them, you're sort of living within the Canadian culture.
Yes.
Spaghetti and
right. And so therefore, that must have been a sort of, going there at 13, a sort of a culture shock or some sort of identity crisis that you would have gone through.
Well, luckily,
not being able really to connect.
Luckily, I would say I had brothers and sisters, five of them at the time. I had an aunt, you know.
Okay. So the family unit.
Yes, which has always been
played
strong.
a sort of a stabilizing role.
Precisely.
And helped you really to connect.
Yes, precisely. You know, the family was there. I think if I were an only child, I was there alone, it would have been more dramatic, if you will, more drastic.
Yes.
But having my family, I think it softened the change.
Yes.
You know, but again, you know, when I found the association in 1990, for me that was an eye-opener. You know,
what's the name of the St. Kitts and Nevis Cultural
Association of Montreal.
And it was founded in?
Well, that was founded in 1970.
1970,
yes,
before I was born.
After I was born, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah, that was founded in 1970. So I joined there in 1990. As a matter of fact, the very first event I attended, Prime Minister Simmons, it was in September. They were celebrating the anniversary, and it was an event that Prime Minister Simmons was speaking at. So I attended, and I was amazed, you know, to see. I mean, the place was packed. You know, I didn't believe that my people could put on such an event. Honestly, I mean, that's how, you know, naive I was at the time about what was going on with my people in Montreal, and I was truly amazed. And I was so impressed that I joined the association, and I've been a part of that association ever since.
Right.
You know, ever since. And,
you know, one of the things of when people live away from their homeland, when they've made other countries their home, away from their homeland, you use that word, connect. They always look to connect.
right.
And to connect with something that they're familiar with. Something that they can pinpoint as, look, this is a part of who I am.
Right.
This is a part of my identity. Now, we can think of some commonalities in the Caribbean. For example, most of the islands in the Caribbean, we know about Carnival. Those who would have traveled to England, and we have the diasporic community in the UK.
Right.
We have the diasporic community, as you said, in Canada.
Right, absolutely.
And we have the diasporic community in the USA. I think those are the three major North American, well, UK is European, but metropolitan countries
right.
where Kittitians and divisions have settled. And we can think of finding yourself within a group, that you can identify with the culture. For example, in the UK, in England, you have the Notting Hill Carnival.
Yes, yes.
And basically, you know, those from the Caribbean can identify
Right,
with that carnival.
absolutely.
And then you have in Canada, you call it Caribana.
Well, the big one, yes, the big one
There's
is
Caribana, and then there's
in
another
Toronto.
one.
Yes, they have the big one in right now. The biggest one in Canada is the Caribana in Toronto,
In Toronto.
which is normally the first weekend of August. We have one in Montreal as well, which used to be at one point the biggest one in North America. We call it Cari Fiesta. It's sort of, frankly, over the years has dwindled down substantially.
Yes.
But it's still going strong, you know. And we go out and support and make the best of it. But you know, again, it brings the culture back to us. You know?
It brings the culture
It's our
back.
music, our food, our dance, you know, displayed on the streets of Montreal, which is nice to see.
It's not only nice to see, but it is so important for others to realize that, yes, we might be in the minority, but at the very same time, we are making a contribution.
Oh, sure. We have something to offer.
We have something to offer.
Precisely, yeah.
And then there are others as well who can learn from us.
Exactly.
In terms of what our culture is and so on. And I am sure that it brings a lot of economic benefits to those countries, because
Sure.
then we bring out their barbecue stalls,
Oh,
and,
wow. Yeah.
and there's a lot of commerce, commercial activity basically taking place.
Well, take the one in Toronto. I mean, I think that's the biggest carnival in North America, right? I mean, it brings such tourism into the area. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, at that time of the year, you can't find a hotel room in Toronto.
Right.
You know, the streets are packed at night. You know, restaurants are packed. You know, this Caribbean Carnival, it brings contributes greatly to the economy of
yes.
of
And then
Toronto.
in New York, of course, we have the Labor Day.
That's right.
In
That's right.
Brooklyn, that's another thing where you find
Miami,
our people
yes.
mesh, and then you have the Miami Carnival,
Right, right.
and so on.
Yes.
And even here in St. Kitts, and we're moving in the right direction, because we have a diasporic community here with, they speak a different language. They're Hispanics.
Yes.
They speak Spanish, of course, but we recognize that they are a part and parcel of our society.
Yes.
And we have here in St. Kitts what we call the Latin Fiesta. You know, which is basically Latin music
Right.
and that sort of a thing. It's sort of like the, if you want to call it, the Latin Music Festival.
When is that normally?
I think it is sometime in October.
Oh, yes? Okay.
I think it is somewhere in October, around that time, you know. And the people who are here, not only the Hispanics, but Kittitians and Nevisians,
Yes.
also
Participate,
mix
of
and
course.
mingle and
Yes.
so on.
Yes. of course.
And you have that whole
Yeah.
cultural mix,
Yes.
you know?
Exchange. Yes.
The cultural exchange,
Yes, indeed.
which is so important. You know, sometimes people go away and we think that they're forgotten, that they've become totally absorbed where they have migrated to. But at the very same time, you cannot run away
Right. You know, many of us try.
from where your neighbor string buried.
And
You know that? You know your neighbor string?
Many of us do try, because I've heard some people, you know, people you ask them where they don't want to be connected to the Caribbean, they don't want to be connected back to that small island where they come from. Man,
Right.
I'm proud of that small island where I came from. You know,
Yes.
anybody ask me where I come from, it's St. Kitts Nevis.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I big up my island any place I go. I mean, I've been away for a while, of
You can,
course. but-
it's
yeah.
a sort of a foolish pride,
Yeah.
basically, not to acknowledge where you're from, you know, because your homeland is your
That's
homeland.
your homeland. Yes. Yeah. That's
You
your
know?
homeland.
And I often say that, you know, being patriotic does not mean that your country is perfect. No country
No
is
country is
perfect.
perfect. Yeah.
But at the very same time, you recognize that even though it is not perfect, it is your country.
Right, and you do the very best that you can, even though you may be abroad, to try to make that country perfect.
And you do the
You know?
very best, which is the
Yes.
role that the diaspora
Right.
actually has to play,
Mm-hmm.
or the people in the diaspora have to play,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of their contribution to where their navel string buried.
Right, right. Navel stringer. I haven't heard it for a long time. You're right. You're absolutely
You know
right.
the
You're
umbilical
absolutely
cord, your physiology.
Yes,
So
yes.
you know you would
But I prefer navel string.
the navel string.
No, it's true. You know, we have to be proud of where we came from. Like I said, even though it's not perfect, you know, and we are abroad, we do the best that we can to assist here. And quite frankly, that is, you know, the association that I belong to, St. Kitts and Nevis Cultural Association, that is one of the things that we have done since our inception in 1970.
Yes.
You know, and we've always tried to do as much as we can here for organizations back here in St. Kitts and Nevis. You know, and one of the things that we did, again, looking towards that, last year we were down here for ANSAR, the Anguilla Nevis St. Kitts Association's reunion. That too was founded by our organization in Montreal. The first event was in Montreal in '84.
So you're saying that ANSAR, the Anguilla Nevis St. Kitts Association's
Yes.
reunion,
Mm-hmm.
was founded
Yes,
out of the St. Kitts and Nevis Cultural Association
in Montreal.
in Montreal.
Yeah.
That's
Back then we
interesting.
used to be called, well, when I became president a number of years back, we changed the name because Anguilla was no longer, we used to be the St. Kitts Nevis Anguilla Sociocultural. So that's what it used to be back when it was actually founded,
Yes.
but we changed the name later on. But still, we have that connection to Anguilla nonetheless, right? Because ANSAR, Anguilla is a part of the ANSAR activity. And the idea about ANSAR, again, was to bring all of these different organizations together, you know, from the diaspora, and, of course, celebrate our oneness, and at the same time, you know, together affect change or make contributions to organizations here in St. Kitts and Nevis. You know, whether it's the hospital or schools, whatever the case might be. That was the purpose of that organization when it began. And what we have done over the years is that a certain amount of profit from ANSAR must go towards charitable causes. As a matter of fact, 30% must be divided equally between St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla
Yes.
for charitable causes. As a matter of fact, just 3 weeks ago, from our event in ANSAR event in 2016, we've been trying to find an organization, and believe it or not, sometimes it's not easy to give away things. We've been trying to find an organization in Anguilla to support with the 10% from our event.
Yes.
And just recently, we just sent them computers, school supplies, technical equipment that they wanted. We got a list of items that they wanted, and we sent those to them. They should be arriving very shortly in Anguilla.
Okay.
You know? And in terms of
go ahead.
in terms of our association as well, we support since 2008. We have two official programs. I mean, we've always made contributions over the years, but in 2008 we began our student support program. What we do in that student support program is that we select schools in the primary school system, public primary school system, in St. Kitts and Nevis. We select one school in St. Kitts, one school in Nevis. And we work with we have liaison officers here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We ask them to work with the administration at the school to select the student that is most in need of support. And we would support that student financially with a subsidy. We're not a large organization, but annually we would give them a subsidy until they finish primary school and move on to secondary school or elementary school, you call it down here, I believe. And we've been doing that since 2008. This year, we're actually supporting 2 students in St. Kitts and 1 in Nevis. And so, you know, once the students are chosen, like I said, we support them until they leave primary school and go on to
Yes.
the next level. And then we choose another school, another student, and continue the program. But in addition to the student support program, we also have a school supplies program where we send a barrel of school supplies to a school in St. Kitts and a school in Nevis annually. And this has been going on again since 2008.
Right.
When I was down here last year, we had a visit with the St. Kitts Nevis Association of Persons with Disability here in McKnight. Spoke to Mr. Bergen and the staff there, and we just recently sent them barrels of supplies as well, computers and different supplies that they need. And we hope to make them a permanent part of a program because, having been there, having seen the people involved, I really think they're in need of our support. And last year, a member of a charitable organization in Nevis, Mrs. Anson, visited our association in Montreal, asking for support for her organization, the Helping Hands Initiative in Nevis. This year, we sent them 2 barrels of clothing and different supplies as well. And we hope to make them a permanent part of our program. And occasionally we have, associations, organizations calling on us for help, and we help if we can. Just recently, we had a call. An organization had the electricity turned off. They owed Nevlec about almost $1,000, and they called on us to help them, and we were able to help them.
Yes.
Like I said, we're not a large organization, but we try to do big things, and wherever we can, make a difference, we try to make a difference.
Right.
So.
So that is one component, of course, of the St. Kitts and Nevis Cultural Association.
Yes.
It's outreach.
Precisely.
To the homeland.
To the homeland, and but we do also try to take care of our people in Montreal.
Sure.
We have an outreach program that goes out to visit the shut-in, the elderly, and so on. And so we keep
among the community. The St. Kitts and Nevis community.
That is correct. Yes.
Right.
And we have regular programs for our members. We try and keep the members together. Lunch, breakfasts. Gospel concert, Christmas concert, and so on. Last year we took the kids. We usually have a Christmas party for them indoors at a certain location, but we noticed the numbers have been dwindling over the years because we don't get too many Kittitians and Nevisians coming to Montreal
in that area.
Not anymore. I guess
apparently most of them probably would go to Toronto.
Toronto and New York. Yes, I suppose the language issues, that might be a problem. But last year we took them kids skating. Imagine all these. I was on the ice myself, having fun, had a great time, and more children came out, and everyone enjoyed themselves immensely. So we have to adapt according to the folks that we have and their needs and so on.
That's right. Now, in what other ways you think you can help with the development of your homeland?
Well, in terms,
I know you spoke about helping with various school initiatives.
Well,
the Helping Hands.
Yes. There is a particular gentleman, frankly, in Montreal, also a Kittitian. He's very concerned about, frankly, the violence and delinquency. So I spoke to someone. I asked them to, before I go back,
yes,
I'd like to get in touch with some of those organizations that are working with after-school programs and so on, working with the youth, working with troubled youth in particular. This particular person in Montreal feels that we could develop another program, perhaps, that can support those types of organizations down here. So before I go back, I certainly hope to meet with members of the leaders of those organizations and see what their needs are and how we might be able to help them as well.
Yeah, we definitely need all hands on deck approach, especially where our young people are concerned in helping them to be socialized well.
Yes.
And to be well adapted to society so that, of course, we can eradicate or reduce some of the antisocial behaviors that we are seeing.
You'll never eradicate that truly, but to reduce that, I think
to reduce it.
We need to do that, most definitely.
Right.
Especially a country that's building, tourism as its core. You really have to. Others outside are looking at your behavior. They're looking at what's happening here in St. Kitts because we hear it, we see it, You know, nothing happens here that we don't see over there.
In Canada.
You know, no, you hear it and you see it. And I know that some of our people, frankly, sometimes, don't want to come back here because of the things that they hear and see. So we really have to be careful how we.
But it's happening there too.
Oh yes, it's happening. But you see here,
you might have a larger population.
Precisely, and it's happening there in a larger population, larger numbers, of course. But it doesn't impact me personally because here when there's an incident, everyone hears about it. It's very personal because you sort of know everybody here, and it's affecting. It might not have happened to you, but you sort of know the person to whom it happened, or the child of the person to whom it happened. Mm-hmm. There's a connection,
Close-knit communities.
Right. In Canada, I might hear of a violent act somewhere, but that doesn't touch me. I don't know that person who committed it or to whom it was committed. So down here, you're a very small community, very close-knit community, and everybody's impacted by, what happens in Sandy Point, or, you hear about it. It moves in one way or another. Moves in.
Now, in terms of, you're one member in that organization, the St. Kitts and Nevis Cultural Organization.
Yeah.
What are some of the contributions that you are making as well to the Canadian society where you are?
Frankly, most of our contribution is within the Montreal community, and really focused on our members in that community. We go out to support the events of the other organizations. We're close-knit. Close-knit. We have close ties with, for example, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Antigua Barbuda Association, St. Lucia Association. So we're very close to those associations. We support them, they support us. But in terms of the activities that we do, they mainly, frankly, focus around the members of our association.
Yes.
Again, if there's an organization that needs support, mainly other association needs support, and we can help, we certainly do that. For example, the disaster in Antigua and Barbuda last year before.
The year before, especially Barbuda.
That's right.
Was decimated.
Precisely. We were there buying them things, with toilets, etc., trying to help them out. I was there accepting contributions, packing them into the trailer and so on. Right?
Yes.
So we do help out each other. We do help out each other out there. Yes. We need to, because we're a very small community.
Right.
We need to support each other, and it's reciprocal.
Now, do you have any sort of plans to return home to live?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I don't know. I've been coming down regularly for the past since 2016. I try to come down at least once a year. So I've been down usually around February. Get away from the cold. I heard they've been having a horrible time.
It's extremely cold in Canada, isn't it?
Oh, in the wintertime, yes. It's like living in a freezer. And I kid you not,
it's colder than the UK.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I mean, they get fog and rain. I don't know if I'd want to live in the UK though. I was there a couple of years ago and we had Ansor, and it just rained. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, it's a bit.
I couldn't wait to get back to Montreal.
Yeah, it can be a bit dreary.
Yes.
Very grey always, and so on.
Well, the thing is, in Montreal, for example, Toronto, I mean, the summers are beautiful. It's like being down here in the summertime. It's warm. But then you have the winters, of course. Which can be very, very cold. And I think 2 days ago they have like 15, 20 inches of snow in Montreal, right? And the past couple of weeks.
Are you happy you were here?
Oh, I'm so happy. They've been having freezing rain, and the weather has been horrible this past month. So I'm really very happy to be in St. Kitts. I'm just praying that when I go back home, it's all it has worked itself out. So,
okay. Yeah. That relationship between Canada and St. Kitts has always been a good one. And so much so that we had visa-free access to Canada.
Yes.
Now that has been removed. Of course, Canada has implemented a lot of security initiatives for people coming into Canada. And it's a little bit more difficult now
Hmm.
to just go to Canada like that.
Right, absolutely.
But the relationship um, has always been there.
Hmm.
So it means then that, people from St. Kitts and Nevis who live in Canada, they have family here and so on. They have to go through the whole visa application
Right.
process and
In,
so
in
on
what,
too.
Trinidad, I believe, right?
I think they've moved it now to probably Barbados.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so on. But
Mhm.
that's one of the things. But challenges for the diasporic community. What are some of the challenges that you would say are for the diasporic community in Canada? I mean, people leave sometimes for greener pastures,
Hmm.
but yet they meet all kinds of challenges.
Hmm.
Um, I remember, when you had that exodus of people going to the UK, probably in the 50s and so on. They went on boat
Yes, yes.
and they went to England. Some of them settled in London.
Hmm.
Some of them went to Leeds. Um, but Samuel Selvon, one of our Caribbean writers,
Hmm.
wrote that book, that novel, The Lonely Londoners, in which he spoke about the loneliness
Hmm.
that they experienced. The Apart from the climate, which is different, they experience certain harsh realities like the racism
Yes, indeed.
that they encountered.
Yes.
Um, and basically, the difficulty that they had in really adapting to that society.
Hmm. 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 Well, that is very true, and one of the factors that you really have to deal with daily, really, is it is racism. We are as different from them as you can be. From most of them, from white people, really. And yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
that is something that you have to deal with. I mean, really, I don't know how you get around that. I mean, to
Yeah.
me, you prepare yourself.
What about the challenge, of also finding employment?
Well, that is, in essence, the biggest challenge. But I always say, if you prepare yourself, you go to school, you get yourself an education, and prepare yourself for that opportunity whenever it arises.
Mm-hmm.
For me, for example, I always felt I just needed that opportunity to meet you, okay, and to have that interview, because I always felt that I was so prepared that if I had that interview with you, you could not help but hire me for that job, and that's always the way I felt. I think one of the advantages I had is that when I called for an, and
Mm-hmm.
it always happened to me, I would call for an interview. Really, they couldn't tell that I was West Indian or
Yes.
black over the
Yes.
phone.
Yes.
So they're very cordial, very
Yes.
receptive. And in most cases, I was able to have an interview. But I would see it when I arrived, because I would see the eyes popped, because they weren't expecting a black person, you know. But frankly, once I sat down and spoke to them and, gave them my background, and they knew what I was able to do, I had no problems finding employment,
Mm-hmm.
you know. To me, you always have to be the best that you can be. Try and do the best that you can do, better than the other guy.
So our people must be prepared.
Oh, you have to be. I mean, every company wants to be successful. Every company wants to be successful. If you have the talent that will take them over the edge, they will hire you. They want to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have that special talent that they need, you know,
Yes.
as much as many may not want you, they will hire you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I recall one I was working as a consultant for a company, and I'm not going to name the company. I went to
Yes,
work
sure.
for this particular company, and of course made friends there and so on. And after a couple of weeks, one of the guys told me, when the manager met you, one of the things they asked us is, would you mind working with a black person? Now, how that comes into the equation, really, if you think about it, that should not be part of the equation. I'm qualified. I have all the talents and so on that you need. I should, in essence, get that job.
Yes.
Right? The color should not matter. Maybe there are folks there who really would not want to work with me, but I deserve that job. right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, when he told me what the manager asked them, of course, everybody said yes because no one wants to look like a bigot, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I went there on a 3-month contract, and I stayed there for 3 years, right? And teaching all these folks, different type of things that, imparting my knowledge to them and building a base and a workforce for them for the type of software that they wanted to design. So once you have the talent and the skills,
Yes.
but you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared. And
No, one of the concerns in the Caribbean region, we're speaking more, to contextualize it, for example, St. Kitts Nevis, is that sometimes there's what you call a brain drain.
mm-hmm. Yes.
In the sense that our professionals, our educated class, are making their home
Elsewhere.
elsewhere, abroad.
Indeed. Yes. Yeah.
Our technical people.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens sometimes is that they're not using that for the development. They've moved on.
You're right.
They've moved on.
Yeah.
But at the very same time, there are reasons why we spoke about the push and the pull factors,
Mm-hmm.
and there are reasons why they moved on.
Yes.
Sometimes it's because they're looking for higher paying wages,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
better opportunities.
Yes.
That do not exist
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in their homeland,
Right.
and so on. But
Right.
sometimes that ends up to be a sort of a brain drain. What do you think can be done, for example, in St. Kitts and Nevis or other Caribbean countries, to prevent that brain drain?
Oh, that's that's very difficult to. I think now, if you look at St. Kitts again compared to the time when I left in '68, I don't see very much over there, frankly, that I don't see here. I think there are tremendous opportunities here. I think St. Kitts have moved, a long way from, when I had to leave. If I had to do the same thing now, I don't know if I'd want to leave St. Kitts for anything that I see over there.
Right.
Once I could get myself a good education and a good job, because there are opportunities here. Technology is here. Once I can get that opportunity here, I don't see the need to go elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, many of us who left as children, Canada, the US, UK became our home. But we've never forgotten St. Kitts.
Right.
We never
No,
forgotten
we
St.
had a situation. This is not about Canada, but in the UK, the Windrush generation. You would have heard of it. Those people that went to the UK and so on that boat, which was called the Windrush, and so on. And they're in England. And for some reason, they were not documented. They were not documented.
Yes.
And they want to deport them. They've been there for all of these years.
Right, generations, yes.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
So sometimes, those people who live in the diaspora as well, there are issues pertaining to immigration, documentation, and all of that sort of a thing that they have to contend with.
Yes.
Any diasporic community has to contend with those sort of things. How is it in Canada, the diasporic community, in terms of those issues?
Well, you have these issues everywhere. You have people from the diaspora, they come and overstay. They come in to visit and stay beyond the time granted, and this type of thing exists everywhere. It's not unique to Canada. It's not unique to England. It's not unique to the United States. We see better opportunities there. We want to take advantage. We don't always go through the proper process to make ourselves a part of that community, and so we find ourselves quite often hiding here and there, taking rather menial jobs because we don't have the proper documentation to get a job that we might in fact qualify for. So yeah, it affects us rather. It has its effects.
Mm.
It has its effects. I don't know how you can correct that because we're always looking for something better. Always want to. I don't know how you can correct that.
Yeah. I know that St. Kitts and Nevis has a high commission in Canada. You're
Yes,
aware of that?
yes. I've been working with Miss Tross, in
Sherry Tross.
Cherry Tross in Ottawa.
You've been working with
Yeah,
her.
we keep in touch. We were there a couple of years ago for the official opening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is when oh boy, I forgot the previous High Commission was there.
Yeah,
And
Shirley Skerritt.
Mrs. Scarrett, yes, and then we were there a couple of years ago when Miss Strauss came in, and yeah, she's been to Montreal as well. The foreign minister, Mark Brantley, he was up there I think 2 years ago. Spoke with us and actually went through this problem with the visa and so on. And I frankly I thought, from what he said, they had met all the demands from the Canadian government, and he too was still surprised that they were being so resistant to changing their policies. But
there's a saying: once bitten,
twice afraid.
twice shy. You know that saying, right?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Maybe they're operating on that policy.
Yeah, perhaps so.
But
Mhm.
that connection that you spoke about with the St. Kitts and Nevis Cultural Association and that support that you offer to each other is so important.
Yes, indeed.
And it's also important that there is some sort of representation for people that live in diasporic communities.
Mhm.
How have you found the representation?
Well,
Not just from the government perspective, but in terms of, are you able to come, for suppose that there is some issue that threatens
mhm,
the diasporic community,
mhm.
how do you get together in solidarity? How do you respond as a group?
Yes. Well, if you take this visa situation, I mean, it's affecting so many of the Caribbean countries. And I think it was 2 years ago, we actually got together, and St. Vincent the Grenadines, Grenada, Antigua, Barbuda, St. Lucia. We all got, and others, of course. We all got together and decided to make an approach to government regarding that particular issue, trying to get changes. Because we all have family who want to come and visit, and it's become a problem. It's become a problem. Right now, for example, I have family here. They would like to come and visit Montreal.
Yes.
But the whole process, I believe now you actually have to go to.
You have to.
You have to go to Barbados or Trinidad, wherever.
You have to for the interview and all
Yes,
of that.
So you have to pay a lot of money to go there, and there's no guarantee, from what I understand, that you'll receive a visa. No, that sort of takes away from the money that you might have, to travel to Canada, wherever you want to go. So it's burdensome.
Mm-hmm.
It's burdensome. It's a problem. It's a real problem, and I don't know, if it's all intended to diminish.
I am
reduce.
wondering if you still have to travel, or you can send your stuff.
Well, from what when the foreign minister, sorry, when he was in Montreal, he said that was the case. You would have to travel to, and I think you'd mentioned Trinidad.
It was Trinidad at the time.
You'd have to travel there to present yourself for the interview and so on.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to, I think prior to that, you could send your documents.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that, like I said, that presents an additional burden on,
No, one of the things, of course, is that diasporic communities, like that in, those in Canada, because you're contributing, let's face it, you spoke about your contribution to the homeland.
Yes.
But you're contributing to the country in which you have made your home.
Yes.
And diasporic communities can influence policy, public policy. government policy, um, especially in terms of issues that are affecting them,
Right.
because they play a pivotal role as well in those societies.
Yes. Yes.
And you know, they have to make their voices heard.
Mhm.
Just of course, you know, you have your interest lies in St. Kitts and what is happening here. And it is not just the contribution in terms of school supplies and material things, but you have a contribution to make in terms of your ideas,
Mhm. Mhm.
your opinions, in terms of, you know, what do you think is happening and what sort of suggestion or recommendation can I offer?
Yes. Yes. It's interesting because when we were down here last year and attended the diasporic conference,
Yes,
and I thought that was a very interesting. I think it was the first time it was
it
being
was the
held.
first time.
Yeah, and I don't know if there are
Oh,
plans.
you were at it.
I was there.
Wow.
I was there, and it was very interesting. You know, and I think many of us have skills, you know, to offer the homeland, and I think it was, you know, a lovely approach to reach out and encourage people to come back and contribute, you know, their skills, their abilities they might not reside here in St. Kitts,
Yes.
you know, but with technology the way it is, I mean, there's still a lot that many of us over there can do, you know, for the homeland. So I don't know if you'll be having that conference again. Is it going to be an annual thing? I haven't heard.
I think they had said
Yeah.
it's every 2 years,
Okay.
but I can always find out.
Yeah, I thought it was a good approach.
I would speak to the minister and
Yeah.
I will find out. But it's a good approach.
Yes.
It's a beginning step
Mhm.
in terms of building that bridge
Mhm.
between the homeland and the diasporic
Precisely.
and the diasporic
Right,
communities.
right, yeah.
Of course, you know, there are some governments and some people who would have taken a negative approach towards the diaspora.
Mhm.
And you know what I mean
Well,
by that.
we have seen
in
that
the sense that, you
yes.
know, they've really gone from us, they've
Mhm.
left us, they've rejected us,
Mhm.
or something like that. And so basically, we don't want to have any sort of a ties with them.
Mhm.
And that cannot be the approach.
Well, I certainly hope, though, that when any of us, when we come back and try to offer or help or assistance, that we will be accepted. Because I know of many occasions when, you know, people have come back here, quite frankly, and you know, they've had problem readjusting because they were not made to feel welcome. You know,
Or
people,
reintegrating into the
well,
society.
people just felt like they were coming back to take their jobs and you know, things like that. And
Okay, so we still have those things.
we
to
still
deal-
have those
We
things.
still have those still things to deal with.
Right.
And
precisely.
sometimes, you know, of course, you know how the sort of a political culture that we have
Yes.
to, and sometimes all of those sort of a things. So sometimes in a very small place,
and that is the
Jamaica Kincaid,
you know.
and she wrote that novel, A Small Place,
Mhm, mhm.
speaking about Antigua.
Mhm.
There are some things that just happen in a small place.
Well, that is very true.
You know?
Well, you know, well, yeah. Perhaps there's some things that happen in a small place, but a lot of what happens here happens over there as well.
It happens as well.
But the
it's
point
just
is-
that it is.
Yeah, it's more dispersed, and it does not necessarily affect me personally. You know, it may affect others who may not have gotten a job because they weren't on the right side of things.
Mhm.
All right. I mean, that would not affect me because I'm not that close to the political situation and so
Right.
on. Right. But there are others who, you know, have to move on when things change. Right. And it happens down here as well.
Mhm.
But I think it's felt. It's felt more down here, and everyone sees it more because
A very small place.
it's a small place, right? But there's nothing really that happens down here that doesn't happen over there. It's just at a different level. You know, the impact on your personal life might be different.
Mhm.
You know.
Right. Now you're also connected to ANSAR.
Yes.
What is your? Could you tell us something about the association
Mhm.
and your involvement in it?
Yes. Well, frankly, I've been the chairman of the ANSAR Secretariat. Oh boy. Well, I first became chairman. I was elected chairman here in 2008 when we had ANSAR here in St. Kitts. And ANSAR allows you to serve no more than 2 terms in the same position. So I served as chair until 2012. and then I became chair again in 2016, and I am presently chair of the organization. Again, what we're trying to do, we try and keep, of course, ANSAR moving forward. There are a number of organizations that are a stable part of ANSAR, and there are others that sort of come and go in
Yes.
terms of their participation. Montreal, of course, that's where it all began. So Montreal sort of,
Mhm.
to us, it's very important that that it continues to function and survive. So right now you find, Montreal, Toronto, St. Kitts had ANSAR last year. New York, we had Conditions in Paradise in St. Thomas that just joined us
Yes.
in 2016 in Montreal. And so, there are about 5, 6 organizations that make the solid core. Birmingham has been a part of it. Leeds has been a part of it. We attended ANSAR in Leeds in 2014, I believe it was. Birmingham, we were there sometime earlier. But these organizations, they sort of come and go. But there's a core there.
Mhm.
There's a core there. And right now we're looking at where we're going to have ANSAR next. A couple of associations in New York are looking at possibility of hosting it.
Mhm.
Now, one of them is an Anguilla association. So whether they are hosted in Anguilla or New York,
Sure.
that is still sort of up in the air. But first of all, a decision as to who is going to host is still nobody has officially requested yet. They have to make a request to the secretariat to host, and then we respond to them accordingly. So we're still up in the air for 2020. Sorry, 2020.
We're about to leave, Mr. Greenaway.
Already?
Yes. So we can sit here and we can have this discussion all day. It has been quite an interesting conversation.
Well, yes,
but before we leave, what message would you like to give to the St. Kitts and Nevis diasporic community, not only in Canada, but you have them in New York.
Yes.
And you have them in the UK.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for many of us who are out there, this is still our home. Okay, we may have lived in Canada or wherever, but this is still, for many of us, this is home, and we're trying to do as much as we can to make this a better place, right? And I would just encourage them to, continue doing what they do, or if they have not been doing, to
yes.
to do, to help out the homeland. But I also have a message for, my fellow Kittitians and Nevisians, because, when I come down here, I look around and I see in certain directions that the country is going in terms of, one thing that disturbs me often when I come is actually the cleanliness of the island. You walk up 4th Street and the amount of garbage you see and so on 4th Street. To me, it's disappointing. I come from a city with 3 million people, and you don't see that in Montreal. Montreal is a spick and span, clean city. So I think we have to value what we have here, and try and take care of it.
Yes.
It is our home. It is our country. We keep it clean. You might see a garbage can right there and garbage beside it. Why not take the time to put the garbage in the garbage can? So I think we have to. We have such a beautiful island. It is such a beautiful place. I think we have to realize what we have, cherish it, take care of it, and really not try to be like, not always try to be like the other guys, the big guys, because we're a small island.
True.
Yeah. I think we need to move. One thing I don't see down here is bicycles and mopeds and so on.
Everybody wants a car.
Everybody wants a car.
Everybody wants a Jeep.
But something?
And the thing about it is that the truth is that a bicycle provides you with better exercise.
Absolutely. And
improves your health more than a car.
Absolutely. But the thing is,
Nowadays, people want to go just to the supermarket that is up the road
in the car.
in the car. They don't walk.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know what that is creating?
Well, I can see
A
the
lot of
congestion.
obese
Yes.
people.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to comment on
It's
that.
also, it's also creating a lot of the congestion.
The congestion
Because
is
I am
severe.
told
Yeah.
that in some countries,
Yes.
people park outside of the city
Yes.
and walk into the city.
Well, as a matter, we take Montreal for example. We're sort of in the city of Montreal. We're moving away from cars in the city. We're taking back a lot of the roads and making them pedestrian walkways, jogging tracks, access to bicycles. You know, it's becoming more
green space.
green spaces. It's becoming more and more difficult to drive a car in Montreal. You know, that's what I was saying
The
before.
pollution as well.
And
that
pollution
comes
as
from-
well. That's what I was saying before. You know, we have to look at what, you know, what's happening over there, and try and learn from it. You know, right now we're still trying to fill our island with cars and cars, which we were trying to do in Canada and the United States 10, 15, 20 years ago. Okay, look at what we're doing now. We're trying to get away from the cars. Okay, we're trying to go green in so many ways. You know, I come down here, look at the abundance of sunlight, the energy that we have, wind, and we're not taking advantage.
You
of
know,
all those things.
there are initiatives
Mhm.
being taken to look at renewable energy.
Yes.
One can speak in terms of the pace at which it's going. That's another debate. But some things have been undertaken. If you look at the airport, there's a solar
Yes.
plant
Yes.
there. There's one
Going
the
towards,
central bank.
yes,
just going on
precisely.
the Frigate Bay Road.
I've seen that. Yes.
In Nevis, there are wind turbines.
Mm-hmm.
And we have had done here exploration
Yes.
For geothermal energy.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have volcanoes.
Yes.
And that's also a possibility. So going green, renewable energy, of course, is something that we have implemented to a certain degree. And we are thinking of doing
More.
more of
Yes.
it. But that is the way to go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think right now we need to make some immediate steps towards, like I said, you know, like reducing our access to vehicles, cars, and so on.
It's creating, we have a parking
Yeah.
problem.
I mean, I was walking along the bypass just last night, and walking on the grass, and there's a little space. I'm saying, what a wonderful, you know, area this would be if they make a nice jogging track or bicycle path. People can, you know,
Yes.
get away from the traffic. You know, make it safer for people to use bicycles and so on. Coming into the city, I mean, the roads are fairly narrow, but I think there are ways that you can introduce these things as well. You know, I've always thought, well, why not take Central Street, for example, you know, and make half of that, you know,
You see, you're
Take
giving your
yeah.
contribution.
and make half of that a pedestrian walkway, bicycle path. You know, you'd see more kids and it'd be safer. Because right now it's really a danger riding a bicycle and so on in St. Kitts.
Yeah.
You know, the streets are narrow, lots of traffic, and, you know.
Mr. Greenaway, I want to thank you so much
Well, so it's been my pleasure.
for agreeing to this interview and for sharing, you know, how important the diaspora is to national development and the particular ways in which your association, the St. Kitts and Nevis Cultural Association, and ANSAR, to which
Yes.
you're also involved with, have recognized this and are doing all that you can do
Yes.
to assist.
Well,
We encourage you to do more.
well, thank you very much, and we will, in many ways, as much as we can. Like I said, we're trying to do more. We're in Montreal. We're a small organization, but we try to do big things,
yes.
right? And we'll
Yes.
certainly try to do more.
Right.
And
You don't have to be big to do extraordinary.
no, you don't.
things.
You know, it takes good ideas and good management, and you can do a lot of good things with a little bit.
Right.
You know.
There
Thank
we
you
go.
for having me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Greenaway.
My pleasure, sir.
Yeah,
Thank
mine's too. Okay. I've been having an interview with Mr. Constantine Greenaway, who is Kittitian by birth, up at Buckley's. Of course, you know where the Buckley's riots,
Yes, Mr.
you know, began.
Yes.
And Mr. Greenaway now lives in Montreal, in Canada. and he so often keeps in touch with St. Kitts and Nevis. He, of course, is a member of the St. Kitts and Nevis Cultural Association and the ANSAR reunion, and he's making a contribution, and his association is making a contribution, and that is where we want to go in terms of our diasporic community. Until then, we will have more persons who we will interview, SKNIS, in terms of their involvement, who live in the diaspora, and their involvement in the national development of St. Kitts and Nevis. I am Les Roy Williams. Have a good time.